Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes. Take it away, Kevin.
This is Kevin Pruitt with another episode of Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Devin Miller. Devin, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
We've already had a fun little quick chat before we hit the big red button, but Devin, you and I are at a networking event. Man, how would you introduce yourself to me?
Well, it's a hard question because, first of all, I'm terrible at networking events, so I'm sure I would mess it up. But we'll give it the benefit of the doubt that I would exceed expectations. So if I were at a networking event, I mean, usually you say hi and you introduce. I'm an intellectual or property attorney, patents and trademarks, and that's how I'd probably start. But, beyond the first 2 seconds of my name is Devin and I'm a patent attorney, if I were to kind of just give the quick introduction that people are saying, so what do you do or what kind of interests you? First thing I always say is, most important is I'm a husband and father. So I talk about how I have a wife that I'm married to for 14 years, have 4 kids that are ages they're 5 to 11. Oldest is a son, and then 3 girls beyond that. And that's kind of probably the most important thing to me and always what I like to talk about. And then beyond that, my passion and what I love to do is anything related to startups, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And that's really been my journey. And that can be everything from I have done several 7- and 8-figure businesses that I've started, founded, co-founded, and grown, and still actively participate in those. To I also do intellectual property, and I started my intellectual property law firm about 3 years ago. Before that, I was an attorney for about 6 years at other firms. So that's kind of if it was just get to know me, or in networking, kind of say hi, and then I don't know, see where the conversation goes from there.
And from what I understand on my basic research here, you would know what I mean when I say ni hao ma or shishe. You would know what those words are, because that's about the extent of my Mandarin. But I mean, man, you just sound like a classic underachiever. I mean, you got an MBA, you got a law degree, you have a degree in Mandarin, and am I right? The last degree is it mechanical engineering or
electrical? So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah. You couldn't handle mechanical engineering.
That's right. I had to go for the easy one.
Go the easy route.
Right.
So, and I understand you're a UVA grad.
So BYU for undergraduate, so electrical engineering and Chinese, and then I actually went to Case Western Reserve out in Cleveland, Ohio, for the law degree and the MBA degree.
Oh, for some reason, I thought you went to the University of Virginia. I thought that was somewhere.
It sounds like a good school too. If we want to club that in, I'm sure someday maybe I'll go do it.
But I was going to say, you just made a note. You said, okay, next year I'm going to get a degree from the University of Virginia.
My wife always jokes that I got 4 degrees, which is 3 degrees too many. So I think after I got the last degree, she's like, okay, now you have to actually go out and earn money and actually do something to make these degrees worthwhile.
So were you a good student in high school?
Yeah, I was a pretty good student. I mean, I don't remember exactly. I think our GPA, I was, not quite a 4.0. I think I'll give the one only memory I have of my grade, which I was at 89.999%. And I went and asked the teacher, would you round up, or can I do a little bit of, extra credit so I can get an A- instead of a B+, which is I think the only B+ I got in high school. And the teacher said, well, you can stay after and do some extra credit, and I may or may not give you extra credit, or I may or not round it up or give you extra credit. And I'm like, well, this is only a maybe. I'm not going to do that. So that was the only B+ I got. So I was a pretty good student in high school. I tended to probably be on the semi-nerdy side, so I tended to like studying.
Well, obviously, I mean, nobody has 4 degrees that doesn't somehow like to be in the education space. But so it seems like such an interesting track. So, you had the electrical engineering degree. Did you work in that field for a while before you kind of got the startup bug, or did you just like, hey, I did this degree, but I've got to scratch that itch somewhere else?
My short answer is not a day in my life. Now, I did do some internships, but as far as after I graduated, doing a full-time job after graduation, I didn't. I worked for some engineering firms during graduation, and I've done some engineering afterwards. But when I got to the end of engineering, and I always, I did the dual degree, but engineering was my focus. And I got to the end, I said, I like engineering, but I don't want to be an engineer. And the meaning, I liked engineering, figuring out how things work, kind of building things and all of that. But I was looking at the career field, and it was more of, if I go into this career, it's, you have to start from the bottom. It takes you have to stay in a company for a long time. You work your way up, you work there 10 or 15 years. And before that, you're a really small cog in a really big wheel, and you don't really have any impact, and you don't really have any say. You don't have any direction. I'm like, I don't want to wait that long in my career. So that was kind of where I said, okay, what else can I do? And then I kind of said, well, I love entrepreneurship, startup, small businesses. And I think the law, and especially intellectual property, sounded pretty interesting. So I was kind of trying to decide which path do I go. And I said, well, rather than choose one or the other, I'll just do both. And so that's where I went off, got the dual degree, and I've been chasing entrepreneurship and startups as well as the law ever since.
So is there a typical day when you get up in the morning? You got your 4 kids, you have, your family at home, you probably have to get up fairly early to get the day started. But what does a typical day look like if there is such a thing?
So I'll give outside of work, I have a reasonably typical day, and then we'll kind of say maybe a typical day at work. But so my typical day is when I get up. So I like to run, or I love to run. I don't know if I love to run. I like to be in shape and be healthy. And so by definition, I like to run, not because it's my favorite thing to do, but it's so I'll get up. I usually run about anywhere between 8.5 to 9 or 9.5 miles a day in the morning. So I'll usually get up anywhere from 5 to 6, depending on how late I got to bed at the beginning, run for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that, for me, I love to run. One, I keep healthy. I don't get, get unhealthy. And then 2, it gives me a time to unwind and think. Most of the time when I'm at work, I am just going 100 miles an hour, trying to get as much done as I can, many projects as I can. And I don't really have time just to think. And so I'll put on a podcast, I'll put on a book on tape, and half the time I'll get through and I'm like, I don't remember what I was listening to, but I had a lot of great ideas. So so I'll do that, and then I'll come home, get ready for work, say goodbye to the kids. They're going off to school. So I usually catch them before they go off to school and before they get on the bus. Then I get into work. And beyond that, I don't know that I have an absolute typical day. Now, usually it's either working on, I have a few startups and small businesses I run, and it'll either be sometime one week it'll be just primarily focused on those, and other times I'm really just focused on the law firm. So and it can be any given day, any given hour, but I tend to jump between those and managing the teams, have great team members in here and great clients and great systems in that. I don't know that I have a typical day beyond that until I get home. Then I'll have dinner, play with the kids. They go to bed at about 8 o'clock. I'll usually relax. And if I have a whole bunch of emails that I ignored because I was doing other things today, I'll answer those and go to bed. So that's about as typical day as I get.
So I've interviewed a lot of people that are in this space that their product or services kind of aims at startup founders. And one thing I hear over and over and over again is the biggest problem with startups is they don't have any money. They can't pay for the services that we want to provide. They know they need them. It's a perfect fit. It's just too early in the revenue generating process. So have you found that to be true, especially with your law firm, aiming kind of in that space? I guess that not all of it, obviously, but have you found that little idea to be true?
Yeah, and that is the primary focus of the law firm. When I started, it was really, hey, I want to focus on startups and small businesses, and so with that, that's really been the focus. Now we have a few, medium-sized clients in that, but yeah, short answer is yes. That was a long answer for a short answer, but short answer is yeah. I mean, I found, and I've been in both sides. I've done the startups and small business. I've also been on the service side of providing them services. And startups always have more things to spend money on than money to spend. And they're always saying, okay, do we hire? Do we get facilities? Do we do inventory? Do we, do marketing and sales? Do we do legal? And as a startup, you don't have the money to cover everything. And so, then it's kind of a triage. And so a lot of times I'm getting into where it ranges, but if I'm working with a startup or small business, if they're earlier on, then it's kind of, hey, we know we need this. Can you let us know kind of what it's going to cost? What is the time frame when we should be considering it? And then I'll also say, here are the times, like if you go beyond this date, it's going to create a much bigger issue for you. But then, when I did it, there's a couple of things that we did to make it easier for startups and small businesses. One is I set it up. We don't have near the amount of overhead that a lot of our law firms. Most of the time a law firm. It's the high-rise building and it's decked out with wood and it's the nicest. And it's not that we have bad offices, but I'm not going to spend an exorbitant amount for just the best building when, it doesn't provide the value to the client. And then, so we can reduce that. And we don't have a ton of partners that are always just taking a big cut of everybody. And, it's really not profitable to do it unless they have a very high rate. And then we set up to be reasonable rates. And then we also set up to do flat fees. And that's one of the things I love. I don't like, but a lot of the legal industry doesn't do, but I love it from offering it to startups and small businesses that they know, hey, for this project, for this task, this is what I'm going to pay. It's all inclusive. I don't have to. So even if I don't get started today, I can save up for it and I know what I'm going to cost. Yeah. And the last thing, and then I'll take a break. The last thing is that we also offer payment plans, which is, we are saying, hey,
that helps.
I understand you have a lot of things going on and that you have a lot of things you have to spend money on. So let's help you spread it out. So that was a much longer answer to a short question, which is I think that startups and small businesses always have their triage list, always trying to figure out where to do it. And so because I've been through that, I also, when I'm providing services to them, try and be cognizant of it and offer them options.
Is there kind of the prototypical startup that really needs your services more than others? Like I'm thinking, you have a SaaS company or whatever that has developed something really unique and has some good funding behind it and has a real runway ahead of it. And there's a lot of exposure, a lot of risk exposure to, for other companies to use that or whatever. I would say they have a really urgent need for you to step in and kind of help protect them. Somebody that's just starting something in their garage that nobody's ever heard of and has very little exposure, that's to me is almost like, that's it's like just in time. I need it. I may need it later, and when I can, and actually maybe when I can afford those services.
Yeah, I'd say I'll give it 85%, 90% true. The only caveat I'd give is a couple people that just I don't think ever really need IP services. If you're a mom and pop shop that you're just servicing the local community, whatever you're doing, if you're saying, hey, I just want to help the neighborhood, I have a business, it's just local, whether it's patents, trademarks, copyrights, really, I would say you don't need it because you're just, it isn't going to be applicable to you. But when you're talking, as far as if you're just a garage inventor, you're doing the only exception, I would say what you said is correct, but the one exception is if you're in a very competitive marketplace. In other words, you're doing something that is groundbreaking, give you an example, cryptocurrency, whether it's a good idea or bad idea, it certainly is a big area and a lot of innovation, a lot of competition because people are trying to figure out what to do. And so if you're saying, hey, I've got a great idea, I'm going to put in a lot of time, money, and effort, it's a crowded field, and I know a lot of other people are working on it. Then it moves that time frame up that even if you have a low risk of exposing your idea out to people, because so many other people are working on the problems, it's more likely that somebody else is going to come up with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And even from like a trademark standpoint and just, the ideas, that you have, whether it's just IP, whether it's copyright, whatever you're trying to protect. But I want to step back in time and just kind of go back to like right at the end of your initial like bachelor's degree. So what was the trigger that you just woke up one day and had that, shining light epiphany that said, I'm not going to work for anybody. I'm going to go out on my own. What was that shift?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a hard question because I don't know if I just remembered this an epiphany. I think it was probably more somewhere in graduate school. So I knew I wanted to do startups and small businesses, but it wasn't like I had here's my path or here's exactly where I'm going to go. And so, I said, I want to do this. I don't, problem with, you get an MBA or you be an entrepreneur it's a very nebulous thing because it can mean a whole lot of things. And there's not like a path you're saying, oh, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you just go do this. And everybody goes the same path because it's not there. So I remember more so probably when I was I was, as a bit of context and, saying I'm an underachiever, I was doing the dual degree. So the law degree and the MBA degree at the same time. I had a 2-year-old at the time.
Yes, one does. I mean, come on.
And then I had a newborn.
That's so nonchalant.
Well, not only that, then I had a newborn. So I had a 2-year-old and a newborn. I was working 20 hours a week as a law clerk. And then I remember, and I can't remember, it was a flyer and email. I always try to remember, never can. But it was basically one of those where it's, hey, let's say a multidisciplinary business competition where everybody gets together. You don't know anybody, you form groups, and you enter in the competition, try and win some money. So that's where I went in and entered. And first year we did horrible. We took second place, but I thought the idea was, it was one where it was never going to go anywhere. It was to make gym bags less smelly. It was a cool idea, but it was never really going to do anything. But the second year we got all back together, and that's kind of where I really got the bug of saying, okay, I love this and I want to do it, was we entered in a business competition. It was for wearables. Now, it was before Apple Watch or Fitbit or anything else came out, but it was, kind of, I was like, I mentioned it, I love running, and I just did a marathon. I said, wouldn't it be cool if you could monitor your hydration level? You could have a watch that could tell you how hydrated you are and if you need to drink. And so that was the genesis of the idea. Long story short, started a business, or entered in the competition, took second place again, which I'm still bitter about, and then started a business from that. So kind of from that, doing the business competition, actually taking an idea that I thought was good enough to start a business was really the path where I said, okay, I can't just work for someone else. And I still worked for law firms for about 6 years before I started my own law firm, wanting to get experience. But it was always kind of, I think, from that initial doing that business competition, I said, I got to do it. I want to do my own thing.
When you did the kind of like the wearable, did you kind of leverage universities to help you in development of the idea, or use any of their labs or anything like that?
If I were to do it again, it would be a great idea. But
hindsight's 2020. That's right. No, I didn't ask you that like you should have. I just curious. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, oh, now I think about it, I'm like, I would definitely recommend that. Universities have a lot of expensive equipment, a lot of great resources that I absolutely should have used. Short answer is, I think we used maybe some software for design or other things, but we really didn't. When we got it started, and I was, I had the idea, and it's like, okay, so how do I do this? I had an electrical engineering background, but I didn't really have any direct idea of how to do this. So I called up my dad that was in the medical industry and that is also an electrical engineer. Said, so if you were to monitor hydration, kind of any ideas as to how we do that? And he's like, well, I got a couple ideas. We could try it out. I actually went home over Christmas break while I was home in Utah from Ohio, and my dad and I went to his lab, and we basically built up the prototype that I started testing. So it was much more of, I did leverage my dad's electrical engineering lab that he had set up with his work to build the prototype and to use a lot of his knowledge. I would have loved to have used the university's knowledge if I could have. I just wasn't smart enough to do it at that point.
And you say things, and I don't want to use the word too much. It becomes like hackneyed expression here, but the things that you say, you say them in such a nonchalant manner. Yeah, I was home with my dad. We went and kind of knocked up this whole prototype of how to measure your hydration level. I mean, was it through your
sweat? Don't worry about it.
I mean, how do you even do that? Is it through your sweat? Is it like salt level or something? Or what do you, how, I mean, you're poking your skin. How you measure that?
No, so we actually, I wanted to do it non-invasively. So I don't think people hate needles. They hate getting poked. And so I was saying non-invasive, basically meaning you don't have to poke yourself. You don't have to go into your body. And so, I had some dumber ideas, and my dad was the one. I'll credit him with at least coming up with, and then we fleshed it out, but of using what's called bioimpedance, which is basically you run a small electrical current through your skin, and then you'll have two sensors on each side of a small part of your body. It'll run it through, and basically depending on where your water level is, and also like the salts and that in your sweat and that will change. That how much in current goes through your skin will go up or down depending on how much you're hydrated. So that's that's a much simpler answer to a much longer technology and building it out. And this has been multiple years, but that was kind of the start of run an electrical current through a small portion of your body and see how it changes. And based on that, it's a good indication of hydration.
So how did that company do?
So yeah, I try and keep these a reasonable answer, but it's always hard because I always want to tell the whole story. But so trying to give a short answer. So we went to enter business competition, took second place. I'm bitter, and we can dive into that if you wanted to know why I'm bitter, but we should have taken first place. But
And nobody's ever
Actually,
heard of the winners anymore. They just
that's true.
disappeared in
Nope.
like 6
I
months.
actually did look up the winner, and yeah, they're since defunct. They didn't do anything, and But okay, now you got me on my tangent. I got to say why I'm bitter. So the problem with the business competition and this complete tangent is that the people that took first place were the ones that won the year before. So they continued on doing the same idea and development, and took all the money they won and invested it in it. So we had a better idea, a better marketplace, a better prototype, but theirs was more polished and nicer and farther along from that sense. And so they won the competition, even though I think we should have won based on all the other work we did. But nonetheless, now that I'm off on my tangent, so we got to the end of the business competition. I had 3 other people that had worked in work or been partners or were a part of the team that had helped do the business competition. And we were all graduating. We're all seniors, or, last year of our school. And I was like, hey, I think this is a good idea. I think it's worthwhile pursuing, but we're all going to different parts of the country. I don't think that's a good way to run a startup, to have everybody spread out. I don't think it's going to be successful. So how about I just buy you guys all out? I'll just, purchase your position. So I own everything outright, own the IP, own the, rights to it, all the development. So I bought them all out and continued on. And then as I graduated, or after I graduated, I went back, and I was back in Utah, or by families. I was working, and I was basically working 2 full-time jobs. I was doing my full legal career and pursuing that. And then I also had this as my side hustle, which was really, I spent as many times as I did on the law side, but continued to build that up. We built it to where we had a pretty good prototype, and it was functional. We tested out, we had good data. And then we were getting an investor, and we're saying, okay, we need to get an investor to really take it to the next level. So we brought on an investor. He was actually part of the business, part of management, and we did it. And we continued to develop it. And we got to the point where we were testing it with college teams and NFL teams, and we were, doing it and getting ready to kind of take it to that final level. What we found out is that when you're working with we thought athletes are a good initial market for us, but athletes want something that not only works well and has a functionality, but it really looks nice. In other words, they have a bit of, a vain nature, so to speak, that they're big on appearance. And if it doesn't look nice, it doesn't matter how good it is, they're not going to wear it. So we were actually going out and exploring, hey, how do we get more investors on this? Or we need to get more dollars to kind of do that final polish. And so we were shopping it around and, talking everything from Samsung to Fitbit. We're talking to Apple. And then we had kind of an unexpected, it was an acquaintance of my father's, but he was doing a different company, which was in diabetes monitoring. And you think, well, diabetes monitoring is different than hydration, but a lot of the technology overlaps and was actually had a lot of congruency. So when we were doing that, we started getting in talks with them and said, you've got a good thing going on the diabetes monitoring, but you don't have as much technology. We have some awesome technology. Diabetes market is much bigger than the hydration market. And so we actually merged the 2 companies together, worked out a deal, and that company is still going today. I think that they've done some soft launches. They have some clients. Really, for the technology will be released sometime next year.
So that's an amazing story. So you pivoted. I mean, I'm assuming you almost stepped out of that at that moment, and then stepped into right after that. I mean, your mind must always be churning. So what was the whiteboard you had in your office? You had 18 more ideas lined up to go after.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm still part of it. I still do things with the business, but I did take a step back. It was a business that was growing. There was a great team, engineering, management. I still do a lot of the legal work for them, but it was one where I'm saying, okay, it's one where it's continuing to evolve. There's a merger, so I'm going to step back, just as you mentioned. So while I still participate in it, that was about the same time as I was looking to say, okay, I think that the legal field and the legal career, I've been working for, and I worked for the big law firms, and I worked for, had clients like Amazon and Intel and Red Hat and others. And so name recognition clients were great. But I was saying, one is, I think the startups and small businesses are getting overlooked. They're not getting the same level of service. It's oftentimes they're priced out of the marketplace. And law firms just generally don't pay attention to them because they're not the big clients that bring in the big dollars. And I also said, it feels like the legal field is like 40 years behind everybody as far as technology and systems, and we've been doing it forever. So let's keep doing it this way, even though it doesn't make sense and nobody can explain it, but we're going to keep doing it this way. So that was really when I stepped out and I said, one is I want to start my own law firm. I want to focus on startup small businesses. I want to do a lot more innovation within the legal field. And that's a whole nother conversation. We set up automations, we set up, CRMs, we set up for how to do videos. And I'm big on videos and content and lots of things that I think we do a lot better. And then at the same time, I also had another business, which was doing product development. So prototyping and product development, they kind of go hand in glove in the sense that we can sometimes help startups and small businesses that need prototyping, product development, or we've got clients on the IP side that are needing product development or prototyping. So it kind of went together fairly well. And so I kind of started both of those businesses up at about the same time and really got those going in, and that's been a lot of my endeavor. Now I got about 3 other businesses that I do as well, but that's been a lot of my full-time or a lot of my focus.
Right. So I want to kind of drill down in the on the law firm side of things as we're wrapping up, a little later. But right now, I want to ask you a question that's kind of a unique question that I hear on my other favorite business startup podcast. That I know that he's asked it in a year and a half, but he used to wrap up with this question that said, "Okay, if you had the knowledge you have today, and you had $1,000, but you didn't have any degrees, what would you do if you woke up tomorrow? What would you start?"
I don't know if it fit. I got an answer, but I don't know if it fit within the $1,000 limitation, which is if it was, I'll give 2 answers. I'll give it if I had more money than $1,000, and I'll also give the $1,000. So $1,000, if it was me and if I had the knowledge, I would say $1,000, I'd probably start up some service-based industry. And if I had it, if I already had all my degrees, it'd be a law firm. If not, I think that another area that is a great area that doesn't require a ton of startup cash would be more of in the service like content creation, SEO, website creation. Those have a low barrier to entry. If you're talented and can do a good job, I think that those are really good. So that's probably where I'd go. I also think food trucks would be fun, but that's more than $1,000. That's nothing to do with my experience. I just think they're cool.
Maybe you just got a bicycle with a hot dog stand or something on the back.
There you go. I can do a hot dog stand. That would be awesome. So now I'll give my idea is if I had more than $1,000, everything else the same, but if I had more than $1,000, and this is an idea I thought it's a good idea, but I just had too many things and I've never quite gotten around to it, but I'll pitch it out to you. I did actually file a patent on it. So if anybody copies it, I will sue them.
Right. Yeah, I know a good attorney.
That's right. I know a good attorney. But my idea was always that, so you have customer service. One of the biggest things with customer service that is a difficulty is that you either you have to automate it, and it's that phone tree that you dial 20 different numbers and you get to the wrong person, they transfer you get hung up on, or you get to the wrong person, you go through 5 people and then they can't help you anyway. And it's always aggravating. But the reason companies do it is because it's too hard to have somebody staffed all the time, and it's too hard to variability as far as how many people are on and everything else. And so either you have to automate it, do chat bots, or you just have to, try and do the other systems, none of which work well.
Right.
So my idea has always been that you would do an Uber for customer service. In other words, you would get customer service, whereas you get people that have a good background and experience in a given industry, but aren't necessarily working to it or aren't working customer service. And then they can sign up or have an app on their phone that when somebody needs customer service, they get connected up with them. And then they can, you can rate them and they can get to do a good thing. But it basically allows kind of hey, I'm sitting at home, I'm watching a show, I'd like to earn a bit of extra money. Somebody needs help on how to reset their iPhone or how to factory default it. I've done that 100 times. I can help them with that. And then it connects them up with that. So if I had more money than $1,000, that's the one I would probably pursue if I were to start all over again. But I've already got my hands in enough things and enough are tied up that I've never quite pursued it. So those would be my two, the ones that I would pursue.
I think that's a great idea. I think the companies would certainly pay for that service because it probably would save them money on not having to have a customer service staff, for sure. But hey, I could see this, and that is on demand, kind of just in time, only as needed type exactly. Response. But let's kind of drill down in the whole legal space for startups. So if you were talking to people that are just getting started, what's 2 or 3 things that you would, advise that they really are cognizant of that you think are just, these are really game changers from the legal standpoint as you're starting, whether it's formation, whether it's protection, whatever you just pick 2 or 3 things that you think are really crucial for anybody that's starting anything.
So I'll preface that and then I'll answer your question. First, I would identify what is the value of your business. I think that's one thing that people tend to not give enough thought about or overlook, because it really does vary as to what you're going to be looking to protect or how you're going to build your business based on where your value proposition is.
You're talking about a financial amount, or are you talking about like what's the value you offer to your customer type thing?
I would have said more is the core of the business. So is it your technology? Are you a technology company? You're offering a really cool product. Is it a brand company? You're the next Pepsi or Coke or Starbucks or Apple or whatever, and you have a great brand. Or is it you are going to write the next best book and it's going to be, you know, the next bestseller, whether it's Tom Clancy or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or pick your book. And so I would say that's the one thing that more people jump over than they don't give enough thought is more of where am I building the value into my business? And then you start to work as to how I protect it. So that would be one of the things I would hit on. One of the things early on that I recommend every business do, and a lot of them do, but so many people jump over is that I would do an LLC. If I had a business and I was going to invest any amount of time and effort into it, I would form an LLC the very next day.
Instead of a C Corp.
C Corps are fine and S Corps are fine. And if you're from day one going to go for investor dollars and that's your venture capital, those type of things, then I'd probably go for S Corp or C Corp. If it's going to be me, my partners are going to build it, LLCs are easier to maintain, they're less expensive,
right.
they're less burdensome. So I'd probably do an LLC, but there are ways that you can do it. But the bigger thing is I would form something, because there's a lot of people that they get going, they're doing it for a year or two, they never quite get around to it, they're just doing it in their basement and that. And then they find out that, you know, somebody sent them a cease and desist letter and they get threatened with a lawsuit.
Yep.
They never set up a business formation. And now their house is on the line, their life savings are on the line, anything that they own is on the line, because there is no separation between their personal assets and their business assets. Or it could be you had a product liability, you put something on the marketplace and somebody got hurt or they got killed or had an adverse reaction. Form an LLC or form a business, and LLCs are the easiest or simplest, but form a business out of the chute. The last thing I do is, now I'm getting into IP, is there are deadlines that you need to be aware of. Give you a quick example on the patent side. If you put something out in the public and it's out in the public for more than a year, you have now just donated to the public. You can no longer get a patent on it. Once it's been out in the public, it can be on trade shows, website, offering it for sale. Anytime it reaches the public, you have 1 year to file a patent on it. If you don't, you miss a window and you're not able to get it. And so there's deadlines associated with protecting your business that you need to be aware of. And a lot of people, and I don't blame them. If I wasn't in the patent field all the time, there'd be deadlines that I wasn't aware of. But what I would recommend people to do is go talk with, I offer strategy meetings for free sessions. I know other attorneys, or some do, a lot of them don't, some do. But I would go and sit down and say, here's what my business is. What should I be thinking about now? What deadlines do I need to know about? And when are the critical timeframes that I need to know? And then you at least build that in your time frame. And if you decide, hey, I don't want to go after a patent, then But the worst is I have clients that come in my room or come into my office and say, hey, I've been working on this invention. We finally got sold 1,000 units. It's just taken off and it's going great. And I said, just out of curiosity, so how long have you been selling it for? Oh, we've been selling it for about 5 years now. And so then it's the thing that I get to say, that is awesome that you have a great business and it's doing so well. I can't help you with the patent because we're past the window. And it's just kind of those things that know your deadlines and then work backwards. And so those are probably LLC formation, figure out your core as far as what your business is valued, not the money you have, but where you're generating the value of your business, and then know your deadlines.
That's a mini law course you just given us right there in just 3 steps. So as we wrap up today, talk to our listeners that might need services, give us your best pitch here and tell people where they can find you online.
Absolutely. So if they need anything, whether it's patents, trademarks, copyrights, we do business formations, we do NDAs, CIAs, a lot of those, anything that's kind of business related on the legal side, we can cover. If they want to, what I would suggest better than anything is to set up a strategy meeting with me. I offer 15 minutes. You don't have to pay a thing. There's no obligation. I just want to sit down with you and help you out. Easiest way to do that is to go to strategymeeting.com. That links right to my calendar. You can grab a day and time that works for you. You can sign up and we'll have a good conversation. We have more clients outside of the state of Utah where I'm located than inside, because where I do intellectual property is on the federal level, so I'm not limited to any given state. So we can do it via Zoom, we can do it via phone call, we can do it in my office, whatever works for you. But just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. The one other thing, if they want to just find out more about myself, the law firm, our prices, flat fees, we have a ton, hundreds of videos, ton of content, lots of blogs, all set up to help them to get, everybody start a small business, get education before they even meet with us or to get a better understanding. They can just go to lawwithmiller.com, all one word, lawwithmiller.com, and that will go to our main website. So strategymeeting.com, what I prefer. grab some time with me. Go to Law with Miller if you just want to find out more.
Now, is that the same site as milleripl.com? Is that
Yeah,
that's just two different URLs pointing the same
two
site?
different URLs. So
Okay.
for a Law with Miller, it makes it easier for people to remember where or how to spell it and where to go. I thought Miller IPL would be shorter and easier, and then everybody doesn't like. Is it I is in P and L, and it's like everybody seems to think like, is that a P or a B? Is that an L? And so I'm like, Law with Miller is an easy way to direct people to it, but they go to the same place.
There you go. Well, Devin, I really appreciate your time tonight. It's been a pleasure, and I mean, there are millions of questions I could ask you. You know, we want to make sure that we can give an episode that people can listen to, in kind of one fell swoop and really take some good things away from it. But man, I just appreciate your time and thanks for sharing with us from so many different angles and really just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Devin, have a great week.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I'll definitely have a great week.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.